What's up? Today we're talking about gaming. Fun topic.
One we don't talk about enough on this channel, to be
Yeah.
completely honest. Kind of contradictory to the name.
So why don't we just start? Games are getting way too demanding. Like, way too demanding. With some of the latest games requiring, like, for instance, Starfield requires a Ryzen 5 2600X or an i7 6800K. And for the graphics card, it needs 5700 or a 1070 Ti. And 16 gigs of RAM, which is just like outrageous to me because that's bare minimum. That's not like you're not getting 60 FPS, 100 FPS with that. You're getting 30, 45.
To turn on the game.
Yeah.
You need that. Or more.
Which is, it's like Windows 11, how it requires like a certain amount, but
I was going into onto some of the articles that were coming out around the time of the release of these games, because I always see people whenever I complain about games, and obviously I don't, it's not always a good mentality to always be complaining, but I'm not gonna lie, I've had a little bit of trouble getting back into AAA gaming because it's just really not been very intriguing to me personally in the last few years. But one of the things, like, people always say, oh well, they'll fix it later, and I'm fine with them fixing it, but could you fix it in the development phase? Here's one on Starfield, like you just mentioned. This one's from The Verge, and this is the title. Starfield is a bizarrely worse experience on NVIDIA and Intel, says Digital Foundry. So they're actually referencing Digital Foundry themselves. And what the comparison was that in-game, the 6800 XT Radeon card will beat the competing 3080 by a whopping 46%. This was at launch, meaning if you had a 3080 and an Intel chip, as a pair, which is very, very common, you're at a huge disadvantage because the game just simply wasn't optimized at release to even. So it might be an Intel multi-threading issue, is what they're saying it could have been.
I just find it ridiculous that you can't host a game. Like, if you end up having good performance with the same game, why couldn't you have just had a little bit longer of development time to just fix that?
I think it's also the fact that they're selling these games for full price too.
Yeah.
And you also don't get a physical copy either. So there's just all of these downsides to buying games now that weren't really as much of an issue however long ago. Like, for example, there have been some games that have become unplayable on certain systems over time. I'm talking about Cyberpunk specifically, where literally a PS4 disc on a PlayStation 4 and you're not going to really get a playable experience. But I doubt that they've been patching out new changes for that older disc. But because you own the disc, you still have the base game. So if a game gets updated later, you can still play what you paid for. Whereas going forward, that's going to become harder and harder to
and then
achieve.
By the time you, if it's a story game, by the time you finish the game, they fixed the stuff that was broken.
And you might not ever want to go back and play it again.
Exactly.
And I think that kind of ties into how fun the games actually are. This is one that's not on the list because it came out 5 days ago. It's called Hellblade 2.
Okay.
5 years of development time, advertised 8 hours of playthrough time. It's a story-based game.
Yep.
But in reality, the campaign can be completed in as little as 4.5 hours. So if you can think about how long a game sits in development for, 5 years of development for 5 hours of gameplay, and from a couple of different sources that I've seen, the gameplay is nothing to write home about it.
I mean, I can understand a game taking a good 2 years to complete, maybe 3.
Even
but
if it did take 5.
If you're only providing that little amount of story, that's kind of crazy. I guess there's probably a lot of detail that went into it, but if it ends up not being a good game too, it's not groundbreaking, and you spent that long on it, and they probably were still by 5 years, by the end of the development phase, there's things that have phased out that they were using.
That's what happened to Cyberpunk. That's why a lot of complaints about the engine not feeling super great. Well, I'm not surprised. It's a 7-year-old project.
Yeah.
So it's markedly last generation.
I mean, if they upgraded with the time, like if they kept on writing over what they already wrote, then I guess like it could have been
that adds development time. So no matter
exactly.
what, like
you're just gonna
this never-ending
extend
cycle.
you're just gonna extend it.
I think it's also like an issue of just poor planning. At least in the case of Cyberpunk in this game, I think it's just poor vision. I think because a lot of people who want to play games want to play games. I don't think a lot of people want like an interactive movie. I think that phase should have died in the 80s when they first tried it.
A lot of games have been becoming like tons and tons of cutscenes.
Yeah,
and as much as I love a cutscene, like because some of those are absolutely fantastic.
Lego Star Wars cutscenes,
they're always the best. But when you have like a good cutscene, you're like, I made it to like this new place, like in Halo or something.
Mm-hmm.
You've got
like the panning shots of like a new environment to explore. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I don't want like, I found a monster or something. It's time to beat it, and then it just pans to a cutscene of you destroying the monster. Like, what's the point of playing the game if there's not going to be as much?
It's all a balance. I think one example of a game that really kind of hits the nail on the head in terms of, while it did have a long development time, it did deliver in gameplay, details, characters. I think Red Dead Redemption 2 just figured it out. And
it's
Grand Theft Auto 6 will probably be the same idea because that's been in the oven for
I hope that GTA 6 is going to be a fantastic game.
I'll probably get it. But the thing, that's what I'm seeing with modern gaming is that either the gameplay isn't there or it just doesn't really meet expectations at launch at all.
Yeah, and
in terms of performance.
So, performance, definitely. If you're gonna take that long to make a game, even if you're not taking that long to make a game, with what we have currently, you should be able to make a game run at 100 FPS with 2, 3, 4-year-old graphics cards.
It's true, yeah.
Like I want to be able to sit down with a computer that was made last year and have good performance. All right, I don't want much, but if I've got a 1 or 2-year-old graphics card, let me play a game with good performance.
I agree.
Especially like a 3080, that's only 3 years old, 4 years old at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was almost $1,000
exactly
to add on.
It was well, $1,000 if you're lucky. It was $1,600 for half the people who bought one, and you're giving us like poor performance. They probably what Intel CPU was that paired with?
This was paired with a 12900K.
Yeah, and that's a brand new CPU too. It's only 2 generations old.
2 gens, yeah. 2 generations, give or take, because 14th and 13th weren't really much different, and 13th.
Nevertheless, it's less than 5 years old.
But what I'm saying is, it's even more insult to injury because it's the 3080 versus the 4080 and 4090 is like a good 30%, but you're not going to see the same competitiveness from a 12900K versus a 14900K. They're very similar, which is that, like you're saying, it's a game development mindset problem that we're seeing, where nowadays, with how much technology there is to try to lessen the blow on performance hits on low-end hardware, developers are seeing that as an easy side door to avoid actually getting into the weeds and optimizing from the ground up. I think
a lot of what they're trying to do these days with releasing games early and letting people bug test it that are just from the public, like even I know that betas aren't free anymore, but they'll release a free beta and have people test it, and then they'll close the game.
You mean like the Call of Duty betas for every release now that they've been doing?
Well, yeah, and I've seen other ones too. There was like a dodgeball game back in the day that you would do that for, and I can't remember new ones because I'm not really up with new games anymore, but like I know them, but I don't play them. But they're trying to save money, most of them, because they used to have bug testers. They used to have employees that would play the game, and like they would play that game for hours and hours to try and
like
find
a Blizzard for Overwatch. The first Overwatch had a whole QA, like a quality assurance team.
Yeah, and
they had designated as part of the development cycle.
That is definitely that was a very important part of developing a game, is playing it through and figuring out. Obviously, there's going to be bugs that get through. That I'm not saying that, but you go through and fix bugs that your employees find for you, and then when you release the game, people will report
I think there's one thing.
Bugs.
So I actually was watching a long form podcast on this topic, kind of in preparation for this, to see like kind of like an under the hood, behind the scenes look at what's going on in those environments.
Yeah.
And part of the problem is that for the teams that had those full designated teams built into the development workflow, a lot of those companies had already had a long, extensive history of doing online games, immersive experiences, and they knew how to avoid the pitfalls they had already undergone. But for some of these studios, like the studio that released Hellblade 2 was just recently acquired, I believe, by Microsoft for,
of course,
probably like 100. I think it was in the ballpark of 160 million, I believe. Wow. And that's a good price. But the problem is that now that they've been thrown AAA money, they felt that pressure to create something bigger than they'd ever made before. And I feel like that might have been a contributor to why the game kind of exists in the state that it is. This particular game being more of an interactive cinematic experience rather than a game, like where you're expected to enjoy the scenery over the gameplay, which I guess if that's the type of game that you're into, then this is the game for you. But for a lot of people who would prefer to, with the same money, buy 3 other games, it just financially and logically doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I think that could be part of it too.
I'll use this one as an example. Hogwarts Legacy is one of the better latest games. Like it is extremely high ranked.
I remember seeing people playing this and really enjoying
IGN gives it a 9 out of 10. Apparently it's outrageous. I've never played it, but I want to. The stats for this, for minimum requirements, again, is an i7 8700, a Ryzen 5 3600, which that's not bad, but it needs a 5700 XT for minimum. And I'm on this. It's called Dextro.com. It's just calling out these different crashes and stuff. There's frame drops, crashes, and blue character glitches like throughout the game. There was, at least.
It's probably been patched out since.
Yeah, but when you release a game, especially this game, its main thing is immersion. You want to be like in this world. You're in the world of Harry Potter, and you don't want any distractions. So when
you have
got
detrimental problems,
it is actually like that will make you want to stop playing the game. Like you're in the middle of a fight scene, or maybe you're walking through the woods or something, and then all of a sudden your character turns blue. Like what?
That's hilarious, actually. I think one thing too with a lot of these games that I've seen is that when a game first comes out, its peak player count is in the first year, first few months even. And if you have huge problems with your game, that could mark either a lot of lower performing seasons if you're doing a seasonal release cycle for the game, or it'll just mean that your player count will never quite recover from the initial that you hit that first time. And your poor performance physically on the hardware can be a contributor to how many people will actually keep the game installed. I've uninstalled quite a few games that just don't work. I downloaded Cyberpunk and I pirated it because I didn't trust that it would work, because I read online that it probably wouldn't work on your system, because I wanted to try it out day one and see if I was going to buy it.
Yep.
I purchased that same day Doom Eternal. I purchased what else did I purchase? I believe I bought a couple Borderlands titles, and then I failed to buy Cyberpunk. I just didn't buy it, and I never did. Never played it, never bought it. And I've seen other people play the game and enjoy it now, however many years later, but because of how poorly it performed in my short time testing out to see if the cutscenes even worked. I was getting pop-in. I was getting things that were being overlaid over my user interface that shouldn't have even been there. Buttons that didn't work. Grass that clipped through everything.
Cyberpunk is an extreme.
Oh, it is. But my point being is that I didn't give the developers the money that I had allotted to buy that game because it wouldn't work. And you could not convince me at that point in time to buy something that isn't going to work. No matter how much I'm in love with the idea and the concept and the environment and the characters, if it doesn't work, I'm not playing it.
Yeah, I don't like buying games in the first place. But if you're going to try and make me buy a game that is that broken, then that's completely off the table. It's so easy. I'm saying this from like an outside perspective. It's easy to like go through a game and test for bugs, because I find bugs all the time with games. I know fixing it is a problem, but you need to fix it before you post the game. Like, you can't just release a game to the public. Never mind like these massive corporations that are releasing these games that are like more broken than Roblox games. Like, if you're gonna have one of these like
I'll give that one artistic hyperbole, but you're not wrong. Some Roblox games are very polished, so.
Like name brand, what do you call it?
Like mainstream?
Yeah, like mainstream game corporations, and they're just releasing broken, especially Cyberpunk. I don't even know, like, I'm so distressed about this that
Battlefield 2042 is another example, because Cyberpunk managed to fix itself after however long, and the game is doing very well now. And we do have a copy of it now and use it for testing. It's good.
You see places all the time release perfect games. Like, I'll take, for instance, Forza games.
Yeah, Forza Motorsport just came out, right? Was that recent, or was that 5?
Forza 5 came out
like 2 years ago?
I think about a year and a half.
That game seemed to work just fine.
Forza 5 has not had a problem.
We had MSM, Microsoft Flight Sim. What is that?
Well, these are Microsoft games that are just fantastic.
But that game had not. Even on some of the lowest hardware we've ever used in our studio.
It's hard to do that because it's got you need to have good hardware to run that in the first place.
It's true, but it scales nicely. Is what my point is.
Yeah.
Like, some games don't scale whatsoever.
Those are kind of like Microsoft Flight Sim. What was that? 2020.
That's 2020. That's when Cyberpunk came out too, though. So I mean,
that's true.
It's almost like you can almost see a stark contrast between a well-organized development cycle and one that was kind of overhyped and thrown
I just
together.
hope that Microsoft, because they're purchasing everyone, I hope that they don't overdo.
Like saturate, you mean? Like
if they oversaturate, then they're just going to end up being like, all right, we just got to get these games out, get them out.
Well, what my hope would be is that they actually care about the developers that they're basically hiring on, and I'm hoping that they actually give them good environments to, do what they love doing, not kind of, be conformed to a deadline that makes no sense.
Yeah, well,
I mean, if you look at the state of some of these games,
if Microsoft continues how they've been doing with releasing games, then I think that they're going to do well. As far as performance, as far as content goes, I don't know.
I'm hit or miss. Halo is pretty much cooked at this point. Like, Halo is not in a very good state. 5 was not amazing. Infinite was in a series of development problems for so long that many people have abandoned it. And there's not a lot of, at least from my outside perspective, there doesn't appear to be a lot of confidence in the legacy of that entire franchise. And now that the servers for Reach and all of those are now down for anyone on console, that population of people playing the game is now not really active. So you have the people who go back to reminisce and campaign and play locally, but I mean, how long is that going to last? For people being interested in new releases, there has to be a community of people. Same thing with, I feel like Battlefield's in the same boat, because 5 was decent. It was okay. People liked it. It mostly worked, but 2042 was just a mess. completely a mess. And I did purchase that game however long after, just because I don't like Call of Duty. I don't really have it in me to put that many hours into that game to actually get good at it. And Battlefield's very casual, so I paid the $10 that they were offering it, and that's kind of how that
went. I bought 2042 as well. I don't remember playing it though. I think I played it once with you.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't have many complaints about it, but when you play Battlefield 1 in comparison, it doesn't even feel like they came from the same people. It feels like a completely different franchise entirely, which I think I prefer Battlefield 1, but it's getting off topic. So
yeah. I like Battlefield 5, to be honest with you.
So let me bring us into like the second aspect of why this is so difficult, because we've mentioned some of this hardware and we've talked about it being 4 years old, and that's, for a lot of people, some people might turn the nose and be like, oh, 4 years old, whatever, you just broke. It's true. 4 years old is not brand new, but the problem with new hardware is that as it's progressively been released and the share, the market has increased over the course of COVID. We've seen a lot of, you could call it cutting down of components, but still pricing it the same. It's just a form of price gouging. And I think the most obvious right now is coming from NVIDIA with the way that they have set up their middle of the line to budget offerings completely. So let's put this into perspective. So before you upgraded, you had a 1060 and you could pretty much play whatever you wanted.
Oh yeah.
And it was the 3 gig variant back for
the one that only comes in pre-built computers.
Correct. The underdog one. Yeah. The one that wasn't the one that people usually purchased. And here we are now, nearly a decade later. It's now mid 2024 and we're already in Q2, Q3 territory, and an entry-level 4060 will net you half of what a console will net you, which is 8 gigs. And while it is 8 gigabytes, which is decent, there's 2 major components to that, which I find problematic. The first one being the processor's an 8106, which is not up to par. For context, 4070 is a 104, Ti is also 104, 4080 is a 103. So this one's like bottom of the barrel. Additionally, the memory bandwidth is quite pathetic. It's 128-bit. Very
single.
I believe it's single, but it's incredibly constricted. So in a lot of situations, you will find that even the 3060 12 gig from 2.5 years prior to this release, in some titles that need more VRAM, will simply outperform it, because you'll reach the maximum memory limit of the card and your performance will drop. You'll get spikes, frame loss, etc. And the reason that I have that personal problem with the low VRAM is because the PS5 Pro, they all come with more, 12 and 16. And what's going to happen is that more games that are going to be ported from PS5 to PC are going to have those memory expectations, and all of these cards are going to fall short. Even the 4070 normal with 12 gigs will feel the heat from that. So going forward, with how cheap VRAM is, I just don't understand why we're artificially holding back these cards.
All right, hang on a second. I'm looking at these side by side. A 4060, a 4060 Ti and a 3060 Ti. The 4060.
The 4060.
4060.
Not the Ti. The Ti is okay.
The 4060 has 3072 CUDA cores. All right.
Yep.
The 3060 Ti has 4864. So it has over 1,000 CUDA cores more. It's got the same amount of memory, and the memory bus is twice the size.
For the 3060
The
or
3060 Ti has a 256-bit memory bus. The 4060 has a 128.
Here, wait till you hear the MSRPs for these. So, 4060 Ti is $400 for the 8 gig variant. So they're not even going to give you the 16 gig variant. $400.
$400.
So they're not even going to give you a 16 gig variant or a full size. They're going to just give you an 8.
Yep.
It's going to have the same constricted bus. This is the Ti. So they're not even going to bother giving you
the 4060 Ti.
Ti still has a 128-bit bus.
8 gigs.
Yep, 8 gigs. And while the thing that's super important about this card that I have to explain that makes it in some cases worth the money is the fact that it can be found in a half-sized low, what do you call it?
Low profile.
Low profile, I guess. And that means you could fit it into some sort of retrofit build or tiny build, which you physically can't do with a 3060 or pretty much any of the 60 class cards before this one because of the power efficiency. So with that in mind, in those niche situations, there's not another card that compares to this one. This is the best in class, mostly because it's the only in class, but that still is a valid point.
I guess.
It also pulls very little power, 160 watts, so it's very low, which is also very good. So if you're upgrading a very, very, very old build, this can be a way to not have to deal with replacing, in some situations like an Alienware builds, those proprietary power supplies that you can't upgrade. The 4060 could meet that requirement and still give you good performance. So it's not...
The 4060 does have a low profile.
Yes.
Is it the Wind Force?
I believe it is, yeah.
But it does have the high bracket.
Yeah, but it comes with a small one in the box too.
It does?
Yep.
Okay.
But that's what I mean. Like, while it's not a great card. Well, it's not a bad card at all. It's actually a very good card, but it's a bad price. That's my complaint. And that's my complaint with all of these cards, is that the price doesn't make sense.
This one's the 4060 overclock low profile by Gigabyte. It's the Wind Force. Is $319.
And that's
on Amazon.
And that's not horrible.
Yeah, that's not terrible. It's just, it's not good enough to be at that high of a price bracket for a low profile card.
And that's what I've been saying since the 40 series came out. It almost feels as if every card is one tier below what it should be. Like a 4070 normal should be the 4060 Ti. The 4060 and subsequent the low profile variant should be the 4050. And the prices should reflect that. But we're at the point where NVIDIA realizes that they can do very minimal generation on generation performance improvements and just sell it for the feature stack. And in at least the case of the 4060 low profile, they can just sell it for whatever they want because it's really the only card that can do it. But it's just overwhelmingly disappointing because now you have both of those problems where you have game developers that are forcing you to have to buy more expensive graphics cards and higher end equipment just to then reach the store or go online and be met with prices that are way above what you expected because you probably haven't been shopping in quite a few years. So it's kind of like a doubly compounding negative situation.
Yeah, I don't like this new GPU market at all. It used to be so like you could find the right card, you could find the right price bracket, you could compare them to each other and then buy the card for you. Now there's like the 3060 Ti and the 4060 are like, the 3060 Ti is better than the 4060. And the
generations don't make as much sense as they used to.
They're supposed to be equally rising with, I'll just say for ease of use, with the numbers increasing, it's supposed to be better, but it's not. I remember when the 1060 and the 2060 were the options for the low tiers, and the 2060 was just like, it was way better because obviously it was the next generation, and it was just like, if you had the budget for a 2060, you'd get that instead.
Yep.
And
Pretty straightforward.
it used to be so straightforward, and it used to not be all cloudy from the 2022 price gouging, all the scalping and stuff. It's just we haven't still recovered from that.
And I think the thing that's even more frustrating is that this is what we do. And for a lot of people that we kind of interact with on a day-to-day basis, a lot of them know how this works, and they still find it frustrating. I can only imagine the frustration an average customer would experience. Let's say if you're trying to gift something where the person you might be buying for might also not know exactly which card. Like if you were to ask me, oh, what graphics card do you want? If I were to buy you one for Christmas, or if it's like a housewarming gift or something, I'd be like, let me get a 4080 please. Let me get a 4090. Like I know exactly what I need because I know what my games and work require. But then for the average person to go, oh, I want to play Alan Wake 2. Now you're in a pickle. What are you going to buy? Oh, you have $1,000 budget? Well,
700 XT.
Let's try to fit something that's not an i3 and something that's not a 4060 into a budget to make it all work. It's just miserable. Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, you're good. You go.
I was going to just say, too, the thing that's also equally frustrating is that NVIDIA is the trendsetter here and have been for the longest time. So when NVIDIA screws up the pricing market, then AMD just blindly follows. So right now, you have like the 7800 XT, which is a pretty good card in its own right, but it can also be outperformed by the 6800 XT. And the pricing for it is kind of competitive, but AMD does this thing where they'll release a card at a very unrealistic price that nobody really wants to buy. And the only people who really buy it were people who were going to, no matter what the price was going to be. And then they drop the price later to something that's a bit more palpable. But it's no matter what, it's just frustrating to see it. And I know that this isn't the engineers on either of these companies' teams. Like NVIDIA engineers are great, as are the guys over at Radeon. They're great. It's just that once you hand over the controls to the executive and marketing department, that's when realistically, like the fruits of whatever the engineering team have worked on, that kind of determines the fate, how much they're going to make it cost. So
yeah, I'm just looking I'm looking at the elephant in the room right now.
What?
Which is
what are you looking at?
Microsoft acquiring Steam.
Oh, right. Yeah, we did.
Just do you want to move right into that topic?
Sure. So I'll just give you the quick bullet points for what I have. So they're hoping. Well, none of this is confirmed whatsoever. No. So this is just a rumor that's been spreading, and it isn't completely unrealistic based on Microsoft spending habits. But again, this is conjecture. So there were rumors about a $16 billion offer that Microsoft is preparing. The thing about, there's a couple of other sources where this has kind of been circulating from. Gaming content creator XDorCS and a couple of other users on Twitter have been spreading that. And they're just hoping to acquire both Valve and Steam. And supposedly they're trying to do this in hopes that they'll be able to somehow merge the Microsoft Store's gaming section and the Steam Valve stack of games and software to try to improve the revenue that they can generate out of the Microsoft Store. That's kind of the idea as far as I know. Tom Warren at The Verge says there's no deal in the works. And Gabe says there's no official statement. This is Gabe Newell from Valve. So as of right now, nothing much. But at the same time,
it's very hard because rumors can be like false, but they can also be like insider news.
Yeah.
Like Level Up says that it's false that Microsoft currently has real intention to buy Valve. But then there's like 15 other news sources, like Guru 3D, that says that they're ready to buy Valve, or they haven't officially said anything yet, but they are readying $16 billion.
Well, let's go right into our opinions on it then, because that's what we promised back on the Future Report, which if you haven't tuned into any of our other podcasts before, this is our long-form podcast with a bit less structure, a bit more conversation, but you should definitely check out the Future Report if you don't have a lot of time to watch this whole podcast, go check that out.
Well, here's my opinion.
Go for it.
Valve does not need money. They do not need to be acquired. They are thriving. Their net worth as of March is $6.9 billion. They have over 30,000 games available. Like, they have no shortage of means of income. So the only reason that they would want to be acquired is if they're ready to be done. Like, just
if they're throwing in the towel and they just want to give it to somebody.
All right, whatever.
That makes sense.
I'm done dealing with this now. Which I hope is not their. I hope that's not their.
I don't think the patterns show that that's their intention. I mean, they've been putting a lot of work. I mean, they just completely redesigned Steam. They just finished the development cycle for Counter-Strike 2. They're putting work in. It doesn't seem like they're done.
Yeah, the thing about Steam is it's not a like a corporation where there's shareholders. So it's a completely private company.
Mm-hmm. I think they always have that.
The CEO and co-founder Gabe Newell is the only shareholder, the only public shareholder. And he has been working there. Wait a second. He left Microsoft, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Back, like, he was working there for like 13 years or something.
Half-Life, right? Isn't that around the time when they worked on the Half-Life project, or was this?
I'm not going to say anything about that because I don't know. Unless you want to look that up. That's
because from what I know about the history of Valve is that it all kind of started because they had a dream to create what eventually became Half-Life.
I think that's
kind
what
of
it
how
is.
It snowballed into effect because Counter-Strike is realistically a Half-Life mod or a Quake mod, however you want to look at it, and that online thriving community is what kind of drove the development of what then became Steam and the whole concept of downloading your games from online entirely.
Yeah,
never having a physical copy. I'm gonna look it up though, just to make sure. I could be completely wrong, but that's what I remember.
I feel like it would be. It's so petty, but I feel like that would be selfish.
It would be.
It would just be selfish because there's nothing that anyone would want to change about Steam. Steam is exactly what it was supposed to be and exactly what we all want.
I think there's other people who have different opinions. I think some people say that they're too predatory with the sales market.
Well, so there's that side of it, and I feel like that would only get worse if Microsoft acquired.
I agree. No, I'm not saying that would get better. Do you mind if I give my opinion?
Yeah, sure.
I agree with everything you just said, pretty much. That's my opinion.
My opinion
is your opinion. But there's a couple of things I want to add. It wouldn't just be selfish. It would be downright abandoning a ton of people. Because the biggest thing that they would be doing alongside just giving away what really is a corporationless corporation. Like, they're not just a corporation. They also make games too. And they make good ones. Half-Life has been on a winning streak pretty much the whole time. If you hate Gold Source, I understand. But it's not objectively that bad. Only Half-Life fans will get that joke. But let's be real. They're not as corporation as some of the other bigger guns in the space.
Yeah.
But the thing is too, they're also pioneering free and open source software, despite the fact that it is almost in a sense proprietary. And I'm talking about the SteamOS concept with the Steam Deck. They have an entire operating system, though it's not like from the kernel up, like it's not completely original, but it is an operating system. And if they gave that to Microsoft, now you have Microsoft owning Windows and owning the company that owns SteamOS, which is basically fighting Windows for shares and percentage of the market of people who play games entirely. So Microsoft buying them doesn't seem completely out of the question because they probably
they would only, the only thing that would happen if Microsoft acquires Steam, I'm talking strictly business related, is they would increase their gaming shares and their operating system shares.
Yes.
So their market share value would go up by a lot. But, well, only a small amount in the OS Let's be honest. But in the gaming center, like, it would skyrocket because Steam is. I'm not talking about games. I'm not talking about ownership of the games. I'm talking about
the people who are there.
Online sharing. What would you
online communities, I guess, or just. I think one thing is that you would just move a ton of people under the wing of Microsoft anyway. That would be a huge undertaking if you think about it. Like, it wouldn't be, but like, what would happen?
Let's talk about sheer numbers right now. There are over 1 billion accounts on Steam. So created accounts, there's over 1 billion of them. And as of monthly users, as of 2024, there's 31 active users. And each month...
31? How many?
31 million.
Oh, 31 million.
Did I say 31?
You said 31.
Oh, my bad. 31 million. Each month, I'm reading this off of Google right now. So you know that it's right.
After those AI changes, we got to scroll way down now.
Each month, there are around 120.4 active monthly users, which is, if you ask me, that's pretty accurate because I'm seeing a lot of that when I'm actually on Steam. So, and like I said before, I think there's over 30,000 games currently on Steam, which is insane.
It's awesome, really, is what it is. I've been seeing like a lot of old games that the original developers will put back on Steam, so that way you can keep the games around.
Yeah,
it's good. Even in that sense, it's great for preservation.
And since 2020, it has only increased because
we all got shut in. Yeah, of course we're gonna install Steam.
And here is another thing. In September of 2021, which makes sense, that was like peak COVID time.
Peak Chronically Online.
Steam peaked at 26.9 million concurrent users at the same time. That is insane.
Whoever was running the data servers over there, kudos to you guys.
I know.
It's insane.
So Microsoft would be acquiring a lot. And it would not only be market share, it would also be sheer users. So I know, like, their servers would probably go along with
it would be an entire purchase, I'm sure.
Yeah, so the responsibility that comes with owning something that massive is insane. Like, I could not even imagine how much. You have to think about servers. You have to think about privacy. Like, if you get account leaks for 1 billion accounts, that would be.
But if you're
outrageous.
Meta, you could just ignore it and pretend it didn't happen.
There's that, okay. But let's be honest. Microsoft is better than that.
Yeah.
In some ways.
They're definitely not as predatory, despite our complaints with telemetry and Windows and ads and data collection and farming all the time, but they're not necessarily.
As long as they don't
malicious.
Force Copilot on me, I'm good.
They did on me. I can't uninstall it, man. Help.
I don't have Copilot on my main system, so.
So here's what I'll say back, like, on my topic about Steam. I think what you're saying, like, the biggest responsibility and the thing that would be probably the biggest negative is how many users they would acquire. I think that would hurt gaming in general. Because Windows is already proven that at the core of Microsoft's business plan, it's business, not the user.
Yeah.
And that's what Steam is supposed to be. I think Steam, they also fall into that pitfall a little. But considering they've been around for 20 years, they have not had as many pitfalls as Microsoft has. And when Microsoft runs an operating system that's essentially a massive data farming, telemetry gathering, ad feeding, supposedly professional operating system, I can only imagine what would happen to Steam. After 6 months, a year, 2 years, it'd be nearly unrecognizable. Unless in the clause when it was sold, there was some sort of explicit instruction to leave the client, like the Steam client, as is. Which I don't think that Microsoft would do. I want to hear your take on that. But that's kind of the future that I would see, because Microsoft's current trajectory is not in one of a clean, user-friendly space where people can configure it how they want. It's moving in a direction of, we want to curate. Is it curate or curate?
Curate.
Help. Curate the experience how we think based on our own knowledge and statistics.
I don't want to say that Microsoft is completely money oriented.
It would be wrong to say that.
I don't want to say that. I feel like it could be a lot to do with image.
What do you mean? Elaborate.
I think it's mostly image and like how much they are the center of things. I don't know completely. Of course, this is all speculation.
But you can use their track record. I mean, they had that lawsuit in the 90s for the way that they were forcing Internet Explorer to be the sole browser for Windows 98 and making it so other browsers weren't as compatible. So that way they could have more market share. You might be right about the image. It's that they also just want to be the solution. That's part of it.
Yeah, I think that they just want to be like the only, like the top, the top organization of everything.
Yeah,
like in their field.
They want to be the central solution.
Yeah, and they've done that with operating systems. As far as gaming, they're up there, and I think probably with Activision and Blizzard, they're probably at the top now as far as games that they own that are the top.
Now,
because obviously Minecraft, so they own the most popular game in the world.
Yeah, that'll help.
Next is Roblox. They're gonna buy Roblox.
I think another thing too, like if you think about it, like I can see where like the Microsoft team would be doing that, because they have the Xbox division, right?
Yep.
What better is, and if you know anything about Xbox, they both, Windows and Xbox run a very similar operating system. I believe Xbox as an operating system is like a series of virtual machines.
Do they own EA?
No.
Okay.
I believe EA is their own thing. But I know that Windows and the operating system on Xbox they're not the same thing. Not even close. Like, you can't say Windows Server is the same as Windows Pro. But
no,
you can see the similarities, and there's a lot of things that are pretty much the same. And that's, if you think about it, them acquiring Steam, imagine how easy it would become to then create some sort of compatibility system between Xbox and PC games. Imagine how instantly the Xbox library would exponentially expand.
Wow. Okay, so I don't know how real this is. It's from Statista.
Statista?
Yeah, .com.
Huh.
2024, Nintendo is 59.5% of market share.
Is this consoles, by the way, or is it just gaming as a whole?
This is market capitalization of the largest gaming companies worldwide as of April 2024.
That doesn't surprise me.
Take-Two Interactive Software is 25. Roblox is 23.8. And I don't know what this is called, or I don't know what this is. Square Enix Holdings.
Oh yeah, Square Enix. Yep.
I don't know.
I'll tell you. Let me look up.
Yeah, what games have they made?
I believe they're the. Okay, I'm gonna hold.
Yeah, and they're at
hold my
4.
tongue. Final Fantasy, I think. Let me see.
All right, so the only reason that
Kingdom Hearts
everything like that skyrocketed is because of the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which had 67%.
Yeah, they make Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, Aiden.
Okay,
That's
that
why
makes
they're
sense.
Huge.
How much market share?
Roblox at 26% is crazy.
As of February 2024, Microsoft holds 72% of. Oh, that's of desktop operating systems. We knew that. That makes sense. The 27% of the gaming, because of
the acquisition.
It's mostly Xbox. Nintendo gave away 0.5%.
Well, I mean, that makes sense, because one of the things that those statistics never show is that just because you're a customer of one doesn't mean you can't also be the customer of another. Like, it's not like you're handcuffed to a chair and you have to roll your chair to either an Xbox, a PlayStation, or a Nintendo system. You can have all three.
I have all three.
I have all of them. We've been collecting. We got Xboxes everywhere.
So Statista, again, says that Microsoft generates approximately $7.1 billion. Has generated $7.1 billion.
Okay, so let me ask you this then, based on what you're seeing and what like we've kind of been hinting at with this whole acquisition of Steam. How do you personally think that the Xbox would benefit greatly from an acquisition of Steam, just as a division? Because I just said that a second of all, because remember how I said like server and Windows Pro aren't the same thing, but Xbox is very similar to Windows 10. It's almost like if you can think of a headless version of Windows 8.
Xbox is literally Windows 8.
Pretty much, with a bunch of virtual machines that run containers with games. That's what it does. So think about it, right? If they could find a way, which it's Microsoft, they will find a way to get Steam working on Xbox. Imagine a compatibility layer that could then bring a lot of games directly without having to do much of anything, right from Steam to Xbox. Imagine the implications of just a library expanded by, let's say, out of that 30,000 games, right? 10,000 of them require mouse and keyboard for direct, precise input.
Yeah.
Like a third of them. That's still 20,000 games you've just put onto the Xbox library. Just like that. One acquisition, one transaction, $16 billion hand to hand, 20,000 games.
So the Xbox obviously would get better because it would gain more exclusives that other consoles don't have.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be exclusive to PC, from PC, I mean.
I think they've already done a great job of breaking that barrier anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, any Xbox game that exists at this point, you can get on a PC.
Yeah, Forza was one of those.
I mean, there's Forza, Gears, Halo. Halo only recently came to PC, all things considered. That was only 5 or 6 years ago. But that's not an exclusive anymore.
But as far as how it would get better, if they could, like you said, if they could get maybe 20,000 of those games on Xbox, it would get exponentially better.
Can't you also use a mouse and keyboard on an Xbox? I know you can on a PlayStation, then boom, all 30,000 games.
Yeah. At that point, it would just be compatibility, like how well would it perform. But we do know that Xbox has pretty good performance.
Series X though, I mean that's a very capable system.
Yeah.
They run I think it's like a equivalent to like a 7700 XT, but like the mobile version, so like a 7600, I think.
No. You check that.
Let me see, because I'm pretty sure it's not as
I thought
it was.
Xbox might just get washed out at that point. You know what I mean?
Okay, here we go. This is from Reddit, so I'm going to completely say this is probably not as accurate as it could be, but it's going to be a close enough idea. Series X is 6700 XT, PS5 is 6700 non-XT, purely based on T-flops, which is just they read what the box on the little transistor said it could do, and they just made it. Okay. Conclusion. However, I think that when you have a PC with a bunch of fans and a perfect cooling on a higher power supply with less limitations, it probably is a few percentage less than what a desktop 6700 can do. Now, if you think about that, if you look at the Steam charts for who has what on Steam, there are hardware surveys. 1060 is still very high up there. Most people don't have very good systems. 6700 XT is perfectly reasonable.
I still feel like Xbox would get washed out pretty
Let
badly.
me see. Let me see if there's anybody who's a bit more recent.
What do you think about that?
About Steam and Xbox? Or
No, I'm saying I feel like because it won't really have exclusives anymore, we'll just have whatever the PC has. I feel like it would get washed out.
Oh, it already kind of is.
There's no reason to have an
is,
Xbox if you can just play everything a PC has, and a PC does it better.
In a lot of ways, it already is. A lot of people are already switching to PC from Xbox switching to PlayStation.
I know that. I know that they're already switching from it. But I feel like Microsoft is just going to... They're drowning out their own console. So I feel like they've got something planned with the acquisition of these companies.
Let me say this. So you asked my opinion. Here's my opinion. I think that Microsoft, if they make this transaction, it's clear to me at least that they've come to terms with the fact that their own exclusives aren't holding up against the competition right now. Obviously, no one can touch Nintendo because they're in a league of their own with the types of games they make. No competition, and obviously right now, no new Switch 2 has been released, so the Switch currently doesn't play new games. So
yeah, you should see it play old games.
Whatever it's playing,
you lag playing.
What, like Zelda? I saw it lagging on Zelda.
Super Smash Bros. You lag playing that.
So let me make my point. So obviously Nintendo's untouchable because they know their market and they know their customer. I don't think Microsoft knows their customer as well, but I think that they're learning. I think they're just doing it way slower. And I know PlayStation has their own subset where you can obviously get all the AAA titles and the newest releases. They have their own set of AAA exclusives, and then they have their more obscure, like I've seen a lot of games from the Japanese market on PlayStation that are supposedly very good, but you won't find a lot of those on Xbox as readily because Xbox just doesn't appear to be the place where those seem to do well. Here's my opinion. I think that if Microsoft does this acquisition and Steam, for whatever reason, would ever come to the Xbox, they would do it so that way you wouldn't have to buy a PC.
Yeah.
Because a mini PC, which will have limitations in the storage, accessibility, there will be a lot of things that it just doesn't quite do. But there's two things going on here. You can buy an Xbox, and then Microsoft could promise exclusives because now they don't have to worry about releasing the Xbox and it has a really paltry library of like 5 games. Mm-hmm. Who wants to buy this thing for $500 when it's COVID? I can barely get one. There's 5 games. Now, if they release a new Xbox, they could have 20,000 games at your fingertips. And better yet, we will have exclusives for it. And better yet, the customer has to pay for online services, so the console generates revenue. So I see it as there's a lot of things here that it does.
That's a good business plan.
Problem is, it's all in the money. It's all about how much up front.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Here's the thing, and I'm just gonna be kind of out there. If you go on like Temu or something, you can buy an emulator that has 40,000 games on it, and it's like all the original 8 or 16-bit games. But you're like, oh, cool. But I've played a lot of those. Like, you know what I mean?
I do understand that.
It's kind of, and I see what you're saying, and I completely agree.
I think you're lacking 2 components here, but keep going.
I just, it's one of those things where if you've got so much, it's like less is more at that point. 4 is not enough when it comes to exclusives. Like, you need to have your exclusives. You need to have like Mario and Zelda, and you need to have those things for your console.
Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
For PlayStation.
And there's we've seen the exclusives. We know what we've got. If I feel like they've got something planned with buying these like Activision and stuff, I feel like they're gonna start creating their own exclusives for the Xbox. I feel like that's what they're doing.
They have. I mean, not gonna lie, they have to. They really have to.
They have to.
Because where they are right now, they're dead in the water in terms of exclusives.
Yeah, in terms of exclusives,
they're completely.
In terms of everything else, they're kind of like at the top. But.
So, let me mention two things about what you just said that I agree with, but like, I think you might have missed the point a little. When you buy a 40-in-1 online, you buy it as a pastime or like a second thought. You don't think of it as like your main system. I don't think anyone's ever bought one of those and went, this is my gaming system. You just buy it because you're not allowed to choose which games you get. And for a lot of them, they just boost the count of the game to make the product look better. So they'll just put the same game or they'll put knockoffs of games.
Yeah.
This is a little different because it's a box that gives you access to anything you had on your own PC alongside emulation for controller, emulation for half of the things that are already built into Steam. So if you had a PC at any point in time and you just can't quite afford to upgrade it, the Xbox realistically could end up looking like a really compelling offer, especially considering it has the controller in the box, so you don't have to buy a mouse and keyboard. I mean, it has a microphone. You don't have to buy one. It has, some of them come with a webcam in the package. That can be a benefit in some cases. Obviously, it's not a computer, so you can't use it as like a home station, but it can do home media. You can do Plex with them if you hook them up correctly. You can do a lot with them. So I think that Microsoft, if they were to acquire this and add Steam, they could be trying to turn the Xbox into what they promised with the Xbox One almost a decade ago, where they wanted it to not just be a console. Like, they saw what the PlayStation 4 did, and their reaction was, well, you can play games on your PS4, but you can do everything on the Xbox One. Yeah. See, you can Skype, you can this, but then it was underwhelming. So I think if Microsoft saw that approach and saw what happened with this last release with the Xbox Series X being fine but could be better, maybe their next step here could be, well, if it's going to be a multi-tool, then it needs to be a multi-tool.
Xbox, hear me out. Xbox needs VR.
Yeah, that's not
just a bad like point. PSVR. Yeah. And if they do acquire Valve, then they'll get the Valve Index.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't even think of that. I forgot Valve even
had. That's what I was just mulling over in my head.
Yeah, see, that's a really good point, because that would get them right into the VR space too.
Yeah.
That's a cheap $16 billion if you think about it.
Yeah. It's just $16 billion, but we get VR.
You get Half-Life, you get VR, you get Counter-Strike. They would get Counter-Strike. Think about that. That's a cheap $16 billion. They would have the rights to Counter-Strike.
Oh, they have VR. They've got the HP Reverb, which it looks very underwhelming.
Yeah, no, that's not brand image. That's what they'd be buying there. People know the Valve Index.
Dang, they've got. I mean, it comes with Steam VR.
What, the HP? That's not bad.
So you get Star Wars Squadrons, Beat Saber, Half-Life Alyx, The Walking Dead.
It's actually not that bad.
Rec Room, Project Cars.
So I wonder why I've never heard of it then. I wonder why they've never, like...
I've seen it before.
Do they market it at all? Because I've never seen advertisements.
Yeah, I've seen it before.
Interesting.
But it's obviously not as
HTC Vive. I know
it's $600.
Oh, well, that'll hurt a little. I think isn't the Index also quite expensive though? I always forgot about how much that one was.
All right, I'm not turning this into a review of a VR headset, but it's not Microsoft, but it is it's HP, so it's kind of Microsoft. You know what I mean?
I don't think that's the same thing, but I see where you're going. I think that, like you just said though, the amount of it wouldn't even be. It would be the people, it'd be the people, the titles, and the brand that they would be buying. Like, they would have everything. They would have Counter-Strike, Steam, the Steam Workshop, the Steam Marketplace, everything.
Microsoft,
buy it.
I'm sorry, I'm off topic, but Microsoft sponsors this headset. Like, it's on their website.
But it's not made by them directly.
No. So it says, yeah, it's a Microsoft. It's Microsoft.com. And it's introducing the new standard in VR.
Huh.
HP Reverb G2. I don't know why they're promoting it. There's got to be some type of deal.
Probably because they just don't have anything of their own.
Maybe.
But
all right, back to what we're talking about. My bad.
yeah, either way, if they do end up buying this, it'll be a net negative for Steam. Obviously, a net positive for Microsoft.
But it's a mixed. I have a mixed opinion about what it will do for.
It would be amazing for the Xbox. That's one thing that I don't mind seeing because
But
I think
I'm
the
talking
Xbox
about
is
like users. I have a mixed opinion about what will happen. I think it would be negative at first, and then it might even out. Like,
if you let the Xbox division have full control over Steam and what happens to that platform, it'd probably be better than if you let the team that's deciding whatever happens to Windows work on it. Because the thing is, I feel like the mindset would be different. I think whoever would be working on Xbox would be seeing the current unhealthy state of Xbox and see Steam as an opportunity to make their own platform better for everybody. Whereas I feel like the Microsoft Windows team would see it as a way to advertise to a whole new set of users who've probably already been advertised to a billion times, or for whatever reason try to integrate it better
I hope
into
that they
Windows, into like Windows gaming.
There's so many things like.
Me personally, I would rather it be the way that it is because I want to see Linux become something that you can use for gaming without having to use Windows at all. I like Windows. I'm okay with it. But in all honesty,
if Microsoft takes over Steam, you're probably not going to see it on
that's
Linux
what I'm
for
saying.
a while.
It'll never happen. Windows would never let that happen.
Yeah, because it's their downfall.
It would have to go back to the open source community to bridge that gap instead of Valve using their years of expertise with their emulation to make that happen. So it really wouldn't be a positive, and it would be like starting from square one again, because I know for a fact that the second that Microsoft has the keys to Proton, it would become a walled garden. They would lock it down and make it so you can't license it out. So I don't see that as a positive. But like you said, it's a mixed bag. I think Xbox would thrive in that, and that would be great for sure, and it's definitely feasible with how strong the current Xbox is, not to mention the one that comes out in a couple of years' time. 4 or 5 years from now, probably less. I mean,
yeah,
it's compelling.
It would definitely be huge for Xbox.
Well, not afraid. Just a little bit.
It would be huge for Xbox. It would obviously be huge for Microsoft, but I have mixed feelings about how it would be for the users. And it would definitely lock down Linux. But Steam VR would be huge for Microsoft to acquire.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, what do you think?
I'll close us out then.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. It was our pleasure to host this for you all. We're going to try to do another one of these, hopefully by the end of this month or next month. Probably more into next month, just with the way things are looking. You'll be definitely seeing a change of scenery. We're going to be changing up our studio a bit and redoing the way we set this up, so it should be a little different next time you tune in. And then with that, that is all. Tune in next time for the next Future Report. Bye-bye.